Hello, welcome back to the second video of 36 module Counseling Approaches, Directive, Non-Directive and Eclectic Counseling. The learning objective of the third video is to understand the concept, characteristics, process, merits and demerits of eclectic counseling. Non-directive counseling approach. Attributed to Carl Rogers, this technique was designed to allow the individual in emotional turmoil to talk out of problems and resolve difficulties with a minimum of direction being provided by the person serving as counselor. Non-directive counseling is also called permissive counseling or client-centered counseling or indirect counseling. Non-directive counseling questions the assumption that few of us can solve our own problems. Most of our mistakes come from emotional turmoil. Average persons have enough intelligence to work out many answers to their problems if emotions stop confusing them. What are the assumptions of non-directive counseling approach? First assumption is each individual is basically good and has capability to develop his insight. The individual is capable of making decisions once his emotions and tensions are released. Second, Rogers' view was that people are self-directed. He can think in a positive direction and can help himself to come out of his problem. They need only a congenial atmosphere where they can explore themselves. Therefore, creation of an atmosphere in which the client can work out his problem is pivotal. Third, emotional aspects are more significant than the intellectual aspects. Counselor does not provide analytical input to the client. He only empathizes with the client and responds only to his feelings and emotions. The counselor relates himself with the problems of the client and pays regard to him. An empathetic relationship takes place where counselor keeps themselves in the client's place and play the role of a facilitator or reflector. Characteristics of non-directive counseling. First is, in non-directive counseling, the counselee is active and the counselor is passive. The counselee can come to the counselor voluntarily. In this approach, solving a problem is not important. Rather, it enables one to enhance his growth and potentialities, to be able to integrate his abilities, to develop insights rather than solve the problem directly. Fourth, it deals with the problems of emotional aspects of the client rather than the intellectual aspects. It is because the counselor responds to the feelings underlying the counselor's word and then not to the intellectual content. By reflecting, clarification and interpreting these feelings, he enables the counselee to achieve insights. This approach relies much on reporting version of the counselee. The counselor neither check background data nor administer details. The only approach counselor provides is permissive and accepting atmosphere that the counselee feels free to express, explore and report his feelings. In non-directive counseling, the counselor creates a conducive environment by which the client can work out his own understanding, take his own decision, find out the source of the problem and his course of actions. Non-directive counseling is very much used in dealing with the personal or emotional problems rather than educational and vocational problems. Steps in non-directive counseling. Rogers suggested the following steps in non-directive counseling. The first step is the client comes for help. The client recognizes the need for counseling and comes for help. Thus, help is willingly sought and not given. The counselor defines the situation and creates a congenial atmosphere. The helping situation is usually defined. Client is made aware at once that the counselor does not have the answer to the problem. The counselor will facilitate the client to work out his own solution. Client is also made aware that the counseling time is his if he wants it. The second step, the client expresses his negative feelings. Once the client feels safe, he begins to vent his negative feelings such as hatred, fears, anxieties, bewilderment. The attitude of the counselor is to be empathetic, positive regards and non-judgmental attitude in the counseling. He feels interested in the client and encourages free expression of feelings regarding the problem of the individual. The counselor does not attempt to persuade the client that he is wrong or that he is right. He accepts the client as he is. During this phase, the counselor tries to understand the feeling of the client. The counselor accepts, recognizes, and clarifies the client's negative feelings, not to the intellectual context of what the person is saying, not to the rightness or wrongness of the client's position or belief. He tries to verbalize it, to clarify it without undue sympathy. Third, the client expresses his positive feelings. When the client has fully expressed all the negative feelings, they are followed by the faint and tentative expression of the positive impulses that makes for growth. This is one of the most certain and predictable aspects of the whole process. In this phase, the client finds symptoms less crushing, his own and others' defect less appealing. The future seems a little brighter in this stage. When the client can see some of the good with the bad, he starts to achieve insights. A non-directive counselor tries to accept positive feelings in the same way he did with the negative feelings, with no praises or no blame. He reflects the client's feelings so that the client can see himself from a new perspective. Fourth stage, the client explores various choices. The client feels more free and adaptable once he has expressed all his negative and positive feelings. At this point, the client starts to consider what to do to change himself and his environment. When a client starts to explore various choices, a therapist often may feel like prodding him. Yet, a non-directive counselor allows the clients to explore his own options without instigating or insinuating anything, as the insight of the client, not the counselors, really matters the most. An understanding of insight results in acceptance of the self and new level of integration happen to the client. Next step, the client begins positive actions. The counselor helps the client to translate his insight into action during this stage. The client begins to act once he makes his choice. His action may be slow or imperfect, but the point is he chooses to act. And this action itself counts as progress. Hence, a non-directive counselor will not urge the client to hasten the progress. He merely encourages the client. The client gains confidence with the first small action chosen and executed. Then he begins to show more definite progress and starts to integrate his actions. When new behavior flows from the client's own insight and choices, it shows more enthusiasm and spontaneity than what he does by the command or direction from the counselor. Sixth step, the client decides to stop therapy. The termination of the counseling session falls under the client's, not the therapist's, choice. The decision to terminate depends on many factors, but mainly that the counselor has made several small choices, then carried them out. The client's feelings of independence is increased during this time. Gradually, a decreased need for help is felt, and the counselee is the one who decides to end the contact and terminate the counseling. Merits of non-directive counseling. The first is it is a slow but sure process to make the individual capable of making adjustment. It leaves long-lasting impression, and it removes the emotional block and helps the individual bring the refreshed thoughts to the conscious level, thereby reducing the tension. Autonomy is given to the client. Then what are the limitations of the counseling? It is slow and time-consuming process. It is often impossible in school counseling setup because a counselor has to attend to many students in counseling. It is not applicable in child counseling as a child, the client is immature to make the decision himself. Therefore, one cannot rely upon one's resources, judgment, and wisdom of a child. The client may hesitate to express his feelings due to the counselor's passive attitude. Diagnostic instruments are not used in the non-directive counseling approach. In this video, we have discussed about non-directive counseling. In the next video, we will focus on the eclectic counseling approach.